What do you do in terms of trying to win this division right now? I think you find a quarterback you can believe in and you buy in as aggressively as you can. Would you buy stock in Lamar Jackson? Yes, I would. Would I buy long-term stock in Lamar Jackson? I don't think I would. And some people say, well, what do you mean by that? Over time, if you take enough hits as a running quarterback in the NFL, your value declines. Maybe Lamar Jackson is going to be different. Maybe the hits that he takes are going to be less significant. But over time, I would be apprehensive about Lamar Jackson stock. I don't buy into Baker Mayfield at all. I think Baker has not realized that really the only sort of example of a successful quarterback around his size is Drew Brees, and he's not playing by and large like Drew Brees on a night-to-night basis. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, we know. I told you guys after we watched him play on Monday night, I don't think his arm is what it used to be. He's not uncorking throws like he used to. Which leaves us with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow has the potential to be a franchise guy for the Cincinnati Bengals that a decade from now, we are still talking about how good he is. Now, I think there are a lot of challenges involved. Certainly, Burrow has to be able to handle losing. Guy went 15-0 last year with the LSU Tigers. Everything fell into place for him. Is he mentally tough enough to handle the Cincinnati Bengals not being that good across the board this year? I think that's a fair question. It's hard to lose. They always say the best way to lose a quarterback is to start him too early because his self-confidence collapses and he doesn't trust anything that he sees on the field. What I like about Joe Burrow, and this is one of those positions where I do think there's value in actually seeing somebody play in person. Last season, I watched Joe Burrow play against Alabama. I watched him play in the SEC title game against Georgia. And then I also watched him play in the national title game against a pretty good Clemson team. And what I saw was Burrow dominated across the board. You could make arguments for why he wasn't going to succeed against each of those teams. Alabama, Nick Saban has time to prepare, bye week, 2 weeks. Nobody wins at a high level against Nick Saban with 2 weeks to go. Joe Burrow did. Kirby Smart, really good defensive playmaker. Georgia has no pressure on them. Neutral site game, and by neutral site game, I mean Georgia has all the fans present. They are going to pull off the upset. You could make the argument didn't happen in either of those games. Against Nick Saban, one of the best defensive coaches in the history of college football. Against Kirby Smart, who is supposed to be, and I think it's fair to say, the protege to Nick Saban, the likes of which we haven't seen very many of over the years. He couldn't stop Joe Burrow. And then Clemson, which has got a pretty doggone talented team, and they have got a really talented defense. They had a ton of time to prepare for Joe Burrow, and they couldn't stop him from succeeding at an incredibly high level. And again, I know a lot of people are going to look at the scoreboard and say, hey, the Bengals lost. But I watched their game against the Chargers, and I watched their game against the Browns, and I left it thinking to myself, Joe Burrow is going to win at a really high level in this league. Could I be wrong? Certainly. There have been a lot of young quarterbacks I have seen, and I have thought to myself, oh my God, this guy's going to be unstoppable. I'll give you an example, unfortunately. Vince Young. Vince Young dominated in college. I saw him come into the NFL as a rookie. I said, Vince Young is going to find a way to win. This guy is a winner. More than anything else, right? A lot of us like to think, oh, I can just diagnose what a winner is. And I thought Vince Young was one. I was 100% wrong. Vince Young ultimately did not continue to get better. I believe what's going to happen with Joe Burrow, I've seen progression from the game against the Chargers to this game we just watched last night. I believe he's going to be a superstar one day in this league. I really do. I think he makes decisive decisions at quarterback. I believe he has the right amount of swagger, not this Baker Mayfield, devil may care swagger that isn't reflected in his overall teammate belief. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals know that they have something special with Joe Burrow. And I think they anticipate that they are going to win at a very high level with him. Now, it might not happen this year. I think we're likely to get flashes throughout the season of Joe Burrow as an incredible quarterback. But I think the most likely outcome is, having watched the first two games, this team is just a little bit away from being able to win tight games early in the season. But I think what is going to happen is, as the season progresses, this team is going to become more and more and more of Joe Burrow's team. And ultimately, they're going to win some late games that they have no business winning because this team believes in Joe Burrow, and more importantly, because Joe Burrow believes in himself. And what do I mean by that? There's a difference between false confidence and confidence that is rooted in a belief that you can do a job. And a lot of sports oftentimes is about false confidence. Not necessarily a representative sample of the real world, but we focus a lot, I think, on false flags, on not recognizing the signal and instead getting lost in the noise. And I believe the more time that he spends preparing, the more dominant Joe Burrow is going to get at the quarterback position. Now, some people say, well, okay, Clay, who does Joe Burrow remind you of? It's actually a fascinating question. And I watched him play 3 times in person last season. As I said earlier, I watched him play against Alabama. I watched him play against Georgia. I watched him play against Clemson. And it feels like blasphemy to say this, but he honestly reminds me of Tom Brady. And I understand some of you are like, Clay Travis, you are insane. There's no way to compare Joe Burrow 2 games into his NFL career to potentially the best quarterback in the history of football. But here's what reminds me from Joe Burrow of Tom Brady. It's the way he moves in the pocket and the way he's constantly looking downfield, and that supreme confidence that I believe Joe Burrow is carrying without it swirling over into cockiness. All you got to do is look at the other side of the table last night. Baker Mayfield is a talented guy. But it feels like every time I watch Baker Mayfield play, that Baker Mayfield is trying desperately to convince you that he's good at football. He's not willing most of the time, although he did some last night, to take the check down pass to take 7 yards instead of 17 yards. It's like every snap, Baker Mayfield is trying to prove to you he should have gotten a scholarship. He should have not had to go to Texas Tech. He shouldn't have had to transfer to Oklahoma. Everything Baker Mayfield does is about validating his overall talent. It seems to me that Joe Burrow knows he's good and doesn't need to prove to you or me or anyone else how good he actually is. And that can lead to a lot better decision-making for him. And so, to me, as we get ready to roll into week 3, at least for the Bengals and for the Browns, if you told me right now you can only have one of these guys for the next 5 years, I don't even think it's a remotely difficult decision. I think the answer is you want Joe Burrow beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you want him for the foreseeable future. Maybe crazy, but I believe in Burrow based on everything that I have seen so far.